Kalgoorlie, Western Australia, one of the world's gilt-edged towns. Set in the waterless regions of a great desert, Kalgoorlie is served by this pipeline, which took 5 years to complete. Without this lifeline, the goldfield could not have been developed. The pipeline brings water 372 miles from Perth, for Kalgoorlie is set in an almost rainless region. Kalgoorlie produces gold worth £268,000 a month, and since its discovery 50 years ago, over £200 million worth has been won from this field, a tremendous national asset in a world of gold economy. Paddy Hannon, the man who found it, may be forgotten by the rest of the nation, but Kalgoorlie keeps his memory alive. Paddy, despite all this wealth, died a pauper. In the Golden Mile are many mines. Kalgoorlie lives by the products it takes from the earth. Thousands are employed directly or indirectly by the mines. Gold mining is an industry, a trade, a profession. Sons follow fathers in the business of digging gold. Today, instead of nuggets being picked up on the surface, the Golden Mile has gone thousands of feet underground to win gold from rock, reputed by geologists to be 90 million years old. Telluride, once used for road paving, until it was discovered that it was rich in gold content, truly a case of streets being paved with gold. Gold flows like water, yet just 50 years ago, all this gold could not have bought water. Ingots of crude gold, which with further treatment will be refined to the purest metal, worth £4,300 a bar, a fortune in his grasp. And it's still the greatest lure in the world. Gold, an elusive gleam amongst the dross, is the urge that keeps many an old prospector panning the obstinate earth, always hoping that tomorrow he too will discover another golden mile.
Street Kalgoorlie is like the main street of most other small towns in Australia, wide and leisurely, the footpaths shaded by verandas and trees, people yarning, local identities like Tommy Martin, who came here over 50 years ago. He made a fortune in the gold fields. And Mrs. Elliott, who came as a girl to teach school. She married a mine manager. And the mayor, who was a blacksmith on the gold fields. And best known of all, Paddy Hannon, who sits on the corner of the street that is named after him, the man who found the first gold and pitched the first tent where Kalgoorlie now stands. The great gold rush of the 90s brought tens of thousands of men to the west to gamble against thirst and blistering heat and isolation for specks of gold that might lead them to dazzling riches. Some had no luck. A few struck it rich. But Paddy Hannon found the Golden Mile that has produced 27 million ounces of gold in 50 years. Gold is the lifeblood of Kalgoorlie, the Golden Mile its heart, the mines and mullock dumps its landmarks. Each day the men of Kalgoorlie go to the mines. 4,000 men from Kalgoorlie and the twin city of Boulder. 4,000 men on the Golden Mile. Miners, engineers, electricians, draftsmen, geologists, chemists, carpenters, men of all skills and trades working on the mile. surface of the earth with picks and shovels. The men of the Golden Mile work under the earth in a maze of drives and tunnels and shafts. 1,000 feet below the surface, 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 feet under the ground, ripping out millions of tons of ore with machines and high explosives. Mine 1.5 million tons of ore each year, ore that yields 400,000 ounces of fine gold, nearly half the production of the continent, where Paddy Hannon and his mates scratched with picks and shovels 50 years ago. And over the face of the Golden Mile, great man-made craters gash the earth, the open-cut mines of Kalgoorlie, so big that only the drift of dust and the sound of drills shows where the men are working. Pigeons nest here out of the wind. Day and night, the great machines of the Golden Mile swallow a never-ending stream of rock and stone and dirt from the mines. Day and night, carrying, crushing, pounding, stone into dust and dust into mud. The might of great machines and the skill of men to separate mineral from stone. Gold from dross. Gold to be molten in the furnace, to be poured into ingots. Gold from the mines of Kalgoorlie. Such is the harvest of the Golden Mile. 400,000 ounces of gold each year for 50 years, and the end not in sight. And out in the deserts, beyond the mines, the residue is poured out on the ground to dry in the sun. Grey mud, to be shoveled and stacked in great sterile dumps. For each bar of gold, 2,000 tons of mullet. Millions of tons in each dump. The monuments of the Golden Mile. The days of the first gold rush are a memory in the minds of old men and of old towns. Towns like Kalgoorlie, once the wild, exciting center of the goldfields with 40,000 people. Big buildings and government offices, hotels, gambling houses, theaters, dance halls, all the romance and glamour of the goldfields. A few old-timers fossick among the crumbling walls for specks of gold. A few hang on in the desert, believing that one day the old mines will work again. Gold took its toll in those early days. Hundreds died of thirst or fever, or were lost in the desert. But far-sighted men with faith in the future brought water to the goldfields. They laid a pipeline 350 miles from the watersheds of the coast and made it possible for a community to live, for a permanent town to rise up and grow, for industry to flourish. Gold is the life of Kalgoorlie and its livelihood. Its people discuss the price of gold as farming people talk about crops and the weather. Its young men study the sciences and skills of mining and become experts in all branches of the industry. The old ways are not for them. Things have changed since Kalgoorlie first saw the glitter of gold in its streets. 27,000 people live along the Golden Mile, where a handful of prospectors first pitched their tents. But men like Paddy Hannon are still here, dreamers of old dreams that take them back to the desert to find new golden miles. The yellow siren still sings in the wilderness, and young men are restless. Things have changed on the Golden Mile since Paddy Hannon pitched his tent, but his spirit lives on.
I'm an Australian, and I'm going to tell you about the mining of gold in my country. It was the discovery of gold in quantity that first attracted people to Australia in large numbers. Today, some gold is still produced in the states of Western Australia, Victoria, Queensland, New South Wales, Tasmania, Northern Territory, and South Australia. But Western Australia produces far more gold than all the rest, for about 75% of the gold of all Australia comes from this one state. I live here, in Kalgoorlie, the chief town along the Golden Mile. It is in a semi-desert, and no town would exist at all if it were not for two things: the gold that is found there and the modern water supply that makes life possible in such a place. Here is Kalgoorlie today, a modern town of about 24,000 people. The ground where the main thoroughfare, Hannon Street, now stands was a waterless expanse little over a century ago. Across this arid land, the prospector tramped with his water bag. Surface gold was discovered here in 1893 by a prospector named Patrick Hannon, in a place where he had been delayed by lack of water. Hannon's statue now stands in the main street, which bears his name. Hundreds of men rushed to follow Hannon's example, but the great problem was water, for none was available in this parched country. In 1903, a large dam was constructed across a river near Perth, in the heavy rainfall area near the coast, to form the Mundaring Reservoir. The Kalgoorlie water scheme has one of the longest water pipelines in the world. Each day it carries 4 million gallons of water, 349 miles from Mundaring in the direction of Kalgoorlie. Seven pumping stations maintain the pressure. Men carry out regular patrols on bicycles along their own sections, travelling along the track that runs alongside the pipeline. Without this lifeline, Kalgoorlie could not exist as the modern town it is today. The patrols are always on the lookout for leaks, which must be caulked immediately to prevent wastage of the precious water. A statue to the Irish engineer, O'Connor, who was the principal figure in constructing this water scheme, now stands in Kalgoorlie. It is only 3 miles from Kalgoorlie itself to the gold mines, and the miners travel by all manner of conveyances. Many miners would have no other job, for it is cooler down below than on the surface, where the temperature often exceeds 100 degrees Fahrenheit. Above the mine shaft towers the 150-foot-high head frame. Miners descend in cages, which are tightly packed with 12 men at a time. The cage is lowered swiftly by 1.5 miles of tested steel rope. Should this cable break, automatic fingers will spring from the top of the cage and engage with the lining of the shaft, preventing the cage from falling further. The miners walk off down the various drives to commence their day's work. Smoking is not prohibited, as there is no risk of explosive gases, as in the case of a coal mine. Every day, thousands of holes are drilled in the gold-bearing rock. They are charged with gelignite, a powerful explosive. At the end of the day, when the men have left the danger zone, these charges will be fired. Some gold is obtained on the surface without mining, and men clamber up on the rock face with the aid of lifelines to place the charges. The time fuse is ignited, and when the men are at a safe distance, blasting takes place. Underground after blasting, the broken rock is carted to the nearest opening at the side of the shaft and tipped onto an iron-barred grating called a grizzly. Pieces too large to go through are broken up with a large hammer. The rock falls into a bucket, which is hoisted up the shaft. At the top it tilts automatically and discharges the rock into light railway trucks, which carry it to the extraction plant. The ore enters the plant on a conveyor and is now broken into smaller sizes in a ball mill in which is rotated with hundreds of steel balls. The powdered ore is now treated with a chemical, sodium cyanide, which dissolves out the gold. Various other processes are necessary to separate the gold from the unwanted rock. The last stage of purification is the smelting, and at a temperature of 2,500 degrees Fahrenheit, the molten mass is poured from the retorts. From these retorts, the pure gold is poured into moulds, which shape it into bars or gold ingots, as they are known. Each of these ingots is worth many thousands of pounds. Meanwhile, the residue of sludge from which the gold has been extracted is mixed with extra water to make it easier to handle. It is then run out to what is known as the slimes dump. Here it is slowly built up into hills of dried mud, a characteristic feature of the Golden Mile. These two men have worked at piling up the same dump for 20 years and regard it as almost their personal possession. Many of the dumps left by the less efficient treatment of the earlier days contain some gold. The plentiful supply of water now provided by the pipeline from the coast makes it possible to recover this. High-pressure hoses are brought into action. The dried mud is gradually dissolved and washed into channels. Complete hills are reduced and dealt with in this way. Finally, the liquid mud is washed down into a processing plant, similar to the one we have just seen, and passes once again through the same processes. There is no waste in a mine today. Even the smokestacks are fitted with filters to trap the particles of gold escaping in the smoke. Outside the big mines of the Golden Mile, the ground is pitted and scarred with the constant turning over and shoveling of more than 50 years. Among this worked over ground, old prospectors still seek for a few grains of gold, sieving the dust through their dry blowers, as did the first prospectors before a plentiful supply of water was available. They extract a few specks of gold, which they will sell across the bank counter, for all banks in Kalgoorlie are licensed gold buyers. Although Kalgoorlie is not a large town, it is very different from what it was in the boom days of the gold rush. Yet in some parts of the town there are still signs of the rough and ready days when wooden-fronted shops and tin shacks were commonplace. In some places, houses and shacks dating back to the old days are still standing. But these are gradually giving place to modern houses. But no house, old or new, is proof against the dust storms. They blow in from the desert and drive the people indoors for hours on end. Everything stops until it is over, and the dust can be swept out of the houses and shops, and life can resume its normal course. Children in Kalgoorlie play happily on the mullock heaps of ancient mines. On the rare occasion when the deep blue of the sky is blotted out by rain clouds and water races down the gutters, they have lots of fun, for in this dry part of Australia, heavy rain is something of a novelty. In the main street, there is a reminder of the importance of water to Kalgoorlie in the statue of Paddy